this discussion is going to be mainly about your most recent book.
Mm-hmm.
And my first question is, why the title? Why Leaders Eat Last?
I spent some time with the United States Marines in researching this book. And they really sort of are a remarkable group of people, you know. Mm-hmm. And I sat down with a Marine Corps general, Lieutenant General George Flynn, who actually wrote the foreword to the book. And I asked him, what makes the Marines so much better at what they do? And he said, officers eat last. And what he meant is the way that the Marines view leadership. They view it as a responsibility to those in their care, not simply a rank. And if you visit any Marine Corps chow hall anywhere in the world, you'll see them actually line up for meals in rank order. The most junior person is in the front and the most senior person is at the back. In other words, it's not just a metaphorical idea. They also do it quite literally. And so that was the inspiration for the title, that Leaders Eat Last.
Mm-hmm. Like your previous book, Start With Why, this book draws upon a lot of anthropological and not just managerial data on human behavior. So what does biology say about our proclivities to lead and follow?
Well, you know, we are naturally social animals.
Mm-hmm.
And the concepts of leadership or fellowship, the concepts of hierarchy and social organization are hardwired into us. These aren't modern concepts. And, you know, I, for one, have never been a fan of sort of the case study method where you just go look at sort of what organizations are doing and try and, you know, take what they're doing best, at least not for leadership, at least not for human concepts, maybe for business concepts, but at least not for human concepts. But I prefer to sort of find out why these things work. And you can't help but look backwards at our anthropology. And like I said, these are not new ideas. The invention of a corporation or a company is modern. In fact, the nation state is a relatively modern concept as well. But the notion of the family or the tribe, this is as old as the species itself.
Mm-hmm. And you give a lot of great examples in the book. You give more examples of how the Marine system is set up regarding leadership. And I think people will read the book and see themselves in a lot of the examples.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I know I did, especially in the examples you gave about how leaders sometimes have a tendency to not want to reveal their weaknesses or acknowledge their shortcomings.
Yeah.
And for me, honestly, I don't think my problem is so much admitting when I'm wrong. It's that when I do acknowledge that, it makes me feel weak.
Of course.
And I think other leaders sometimes feel disempowered when we acknowledge our share or our accountability.
Of course.
What would you say to leaders who feel like that, especially given the section in the book you have on true power?
Well, just as the people inside an organization want to feel safe, so too do the leaders.
Right.
You know, we want to feel that our people would be there for us too, you know. This is why dictators fear the people, because they don't, you know, the people don't feel safe from the dictator and the dictator doesn't feel safe from the people, you know, they keep them far away from them, you know. But this is why leadership it requires courage. You know, I don't, you know, sort of, people ask me, what characteristics does it take to be a leader? I'm like, I don't buy into that, like, charisma, no charisma. You know, you have to be, you know, there are nice people who are great leaders and there are some not nice people who are great leaders. You know, Steve Jobs, you know, wasn't such a nice guy, but he was a great leader, you know? And you don't have to have charisma to be a great leader. But I think one characteristic all leaders need to have is courage, because it's the leader that chooses to go first and put themselves at risk to protect the others. And the response is that the others will protect us, but they may not. That's the risk, right?
Right.
So, but at the end of the day, a good leader will be protected by their people. And so when you make yourself vulnerable around your people, they got your back, you know, and that's a good tribe. That's a good circle of safety.
And another theme that I was actually surprised was so central to the book was empathy.
Yeah.
And why is empathy important to running a successful business? And the question that a lot of our viewers will want to ask is, how does empathy translate into my bottom line?
Right. Well, at the end of the day, 100% of employees are people. And 100% of customers are people.
Right.
100% of shareholders are people. And so this is not a, you know, some mathematical enterprise. It's a human enterprise.
Right.
And so if you want to get the best out of people, you have to care about the people. And if the people feel cared for and valued, and that you have their back, they will offer you naturally their trust, their loyalty. They'll offer you their best skills and their best talents. But if they fear leadership, if they fear that if the numbers aren't going to work out, that they could lose their jobs in a round of layoffs simply because you need to make the numbers, right. Then they're going to spend more time or energy protecting themselves than they are giving to the company. There's a complaint. The Economist ran a story a few months ago about the global decline of innovation. And they tried to understand it. And they went through any number of economic, theories and, what's happening with the recession and China and global this and technology. And at no point did they ever mention human beings. Well, who's coming up with the ideas but people?
Right.
And if there's a decline in innovation, I would go so far as to say it's because people aren't offering their best ideas, because why would they? Why they don't? That's not where their minds go. Right. And the chemical oxytocin that's released when we feel loved, when we feel cared for, when we feel safe, actually has something to do with our prefrontal cortex that actually makes us better problem solvers. We become better problem solvers when we feel cared for. So if you want to know the reason for empathy, it goes directly to the bottom line.
Right. Right. And that's definitely another important theme of the book, is getting past abstraction and seeing people as just numbers. And right. when I was reading the section on abstraction, it reminded me of something another one of my interviewees told me. Sui Park said that a major goal of hers was to unlearn American individualism. And I do think that culturally, American society is very individualistic. And given this cultural leaning, what gives you the confidence that businesses can really be more empathic?
I mean, look, it's not an entirely true statement that we're this individualistic society. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, we go things alone, but we don't actually do it alone. Like, we do things in teams and in groups, and nobody succeeds by themselves. What our society is becoming is more selfish, where this is there's good science behind this, because of the nature of the environments in which the corporations and the businesses are building around themselves. Some of our economic policies are literally removing the safety nets and removing the sense of protection that our organizations or our regulations would offer us. And so our natural biological reaction is to become more cynical, more mistrustful of management or of leadership. We don't trust government anymore. We don't trust leadership anymore. We don't trust, and the result is we become more selfish. I mean, we have to protect ourselves if no one else is going to protect us. Right. So I would subscribe to that idea. But the idea of unlearning individualism, I mean, it's rugged individualism that made America such a great pioneer, and it's rugged individualism that makes America such a wonderful place for entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship thrives here, it's top 5 of most entrepreneurial places in the world. You go to Europe, and if you try something and fail, they look down on you. If you try something and fail here, no one looks down on you. They think it's great that you tried. Well, that comes from rugged individualism, So I think it's a mistake to say it's best to unlearn individualism, but to practice empathy and caring for others so that your individualism is more likely to thrive because people care for you and are willing to protect you. Now, there's something there.
Right. It's not mutually exclusive.
No.
Right. And I also like your discussion of the abstract generation. When you talk about Generation X and Generation Y.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily entitled, but impatient.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting observation. Why is that distinction important, and what does that say about how this generation responds to leadership?
Well, it's a fairly common complaint that this youngest generation of workers, this Gen Y, have a sense of entitlement,
Right.
And when you meet some of them, and some of them may, look, there's entitled people everywhere. But when you meet them, you realize that they want to do good in the world, and they're hard workers, and they're not afraid of getting dirty or anything like that. It's none of those things I found to be universal. But what they do have a sense of is impatience. You know, they've grown up in a world where everything comes to them instantaneously. If you want an answer, you go on Google, you get the answer instantaneously. Right. If you need to find something out, you text a friend and you find out instantaneously. If you want to order something, you go on Amazon, you order it and it arrives the next day, you get it instantaneously. I mean, it's, you know, you want to order food, you just go on, you know, you want to get a taxi. I mean, just everything happens immediately, you know? And, I mean, we've all had it where you send an email to somebody, but it doesn't arrive in a minute. You're like, what is going on?
Exactly.
You know? I just sent it.
Right.
You know, refresh, you know? So there's a sense of impatience is what we have now. You know, movies, you don't have to wait for movies. They just go online and you can watch it whenever you want. On-demand television. Everything's instantaneous. Right. And so I think that they accidentally have confused the instantaneous nature of answers, products, and movies with the satisfaction and fulfillment that you can get in a career. That unfortunately takes time. And same thing with relationships. You can't just go on a date and then that's it, you know? Right. The finding of love and the finding of fulfillment are slow processes that require risk and patience and trial and error. And so the way I like to describe it is that this young generation is standing at the bottom of a mountain and they see what they want, love, fulfillment, change the world, whatever it is, at the top of the mountain. And I have no problem with them inventing a technology or taking a helicopter to get to the top of the mountain quicker. Nobody says they have to do their time. But what they seem to not see is the mountain. That there's a journey that must be taken, and the journey will not always be easy. You know, I keep meeting Gen Ys who have their entry level in their jobs and they're complaining that they're not changing the world. I'm like, you've been working for 9 months. You know, and they're like, I think I'm going to get a new job. This place isn't for me. I'm like, okay. Right. You know, it's like bailing in a relationship after the first shudder, you know? Yeah.
And what should management or leaders within corporations have in mind when working with this generation?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the best way to combat it, number one, is I personally think cell phones should be treated like smokers. You know, you can make as many texts as you want. You can make as many personal phone calls as you want outside. You know? Okay. I think this whole idea of people sitting with their phones at their desk, so they're typing and they're looking at their phone like this. Right. You know, if I were to have a bell and I were allowed to ring the bell whenever I wanted, and I could ring it 5 times in a row, I could ring it once an hour. It's up to me. I can ring the bell whenever I want it. Every single time I ring the bell, you must go to the fridge. How much work do you think you're going to get done?
Not much work.
Well, there's no difference.
Right.
It's these distractions, and so I think we have to practice. We have to learn. We have to learn to focus again. And so I think turning cell phones off and leaving them in little cubbies outside is a fantastic way to practice this. You know, that's number one. The other thing is to put people in groups, give them a very, very hard project to work on that they can only solve together. And you have that amazing satisfaction of having to work with someone to solve a tough problem or to overcome something big. That's another way to do it.
And you also share 5 great rules for managing abstraction within a corporation. What is one rule or one thing that corporations can do maybe immediately to start that process?
Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting is the idea of how big our goals are. You know, when companies are small, you know, don't forget the vast majority, over 90% of new businesses fail in the first 3 years. Right. Okay, those are pretty bad odds, right? And they all have expectations, delusions, or visions of grandeur. You know, they all think they're going to change the world and make millions. Nobody thinks they're going to be like, just eke by. Nobody starts a business to eke by. You know, and what's so exciting about that idea is that the vision outsizes the resources available. They don't have the people. They don't have the resources. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the money. You know. And that's exciting, and that's why people come together and work hard. It's really kind of an amazing thing. And when you get the right mix of people and you have the right vision, it actually works. The problem is success. And the problem is when an organization gets large, all of a sudden they have resources and they have people and they have bandwidth. It's so funny that small companies are the ones with all the big ideas. Big companies don't have big ideas. They buy the small companies.
They do.
You know? So why is it that an organization with all the resources, all the bandwidth, all the people, and all the money doesn't have any of the ideas? And my theory is that that's because their vision is within their grasp. You know, their goals are within their grasp. They articulate their vision that they may not be easy, but they're achievable. And I think that's the problem. I think as the companies get bigger, the visions get narrower or smaller or shorter. And I think that the visions need to outsize the resources available. So if it becomes a huge company with a lot of resources, their vision must be absolutely massive. Elon Musk is a great example. You know, he's a billionaire with massive amounts of resources, and yet his vision dramatically outsizes his resources.
Right.
That's what makes him exciting.
Right.
That's what makes him exciting. You know, that's what makes Virgin Galactic exciting.
Yes.
You know, they don't really have the resources to do it, so they're trying to figure it out. And, you know, I love that. I love that. And most successful companies don't have that. So I think that the size of our vision must keep pace with the success that we've had.
Right. Anything else you want to share?
You know, I think that leadership is not something that we should expect others to do. Leadership is something that we all have an opportunity to do. You know, leadership is a choice. And just because somebody's not, you know, it has nothing to do with your place in the company. I know many, many people who are very high up in the company and they're not leaders. And I know people who are very low down in the company and they absolutely are leaders.
Right.
Leadership is a choice. It's the choice to look after the person to the left of us, and it's the choice to look after the person to the right of us. That's all it is. And I think we all need to be the leaders we wish we had.
Yes. And I think this book is so relevant, and I think our viewers will get a lot out of it, because even companies that are innovative in terms of their corporate culture can still benefit from the lessons of what it means to be a leader, that they may think that they're following or adhering to, but there's so much room for growth, and your book really shows that. So we conclude our interviews with a few fun and personal questions. So if you're ready, here we go.
Okay.
Right. Was there anything you learned about yourself as a leader through developing this book?
Oh my God, yes. This was a very, very intense experience for me. You know, it took 2 years of hard work to do it. And there was an experience in the middle of that where I went to Afghanistan with the Air Force. And you know, the thing that I learned most is that fulfillment, true fulfillment, comes from serving those who serve others. It's not about giving to everyone. It's about giving those who serve others and people we admire and looking after them and seeing that they're successful. And and you talked about this concept of empathy, you know, and I might have known some of these things theoretically, but I really got smacked over the head with them. I like to think that I'm a more aware and hopefully a better leader because of this book.
And I will say that it has been such a pleasure to work with Monique and Stephen.
Thank you.
You have a great team.
Thank you very much. That makes me really happy to hear. Thank you very much.
And who is a leader from your childhood that you looked up to, and why?
Oh, that's easy. My grandfather. My grandfather was a bit of a misfit, and so am I. And he was the first sort of major personality in my life that sort of told me that it was okay to be different, you know? And people didn't really get him, and he was considered weird and odd, and he just didn't care. And it was wonderful to see. And not only that, he was a good guy. You know, he had a factory, he was an engineer, and he owned a company. And there was a time where, you know, he would give out loans to his employees so they could buy houses and things, and they were interest-free loans, you know? And I just love that. You know, he looked after his people right till the end. It was kind of an amazing thing to see. And they loved him. They loved him.
Yeah, sounds like a great example.
Yeah.
I like it when people can point to their own family as examples of greatness.
It's nice, right? It means the lessons are close by.
Right. And to conclude, can you share one of your favorite quotes from a leader that you admire?
He's a controversial figure. I'll give you that. But Henry Ford said, "If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." And I actually have that printed out. I printed it with a little label maker and stuck it next to my bed. So I see it every morning and every night.
So true. That's the reality of life.
It's true.
All right, Simon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Is there